Guess who's back? Back again. Welcome to the DGD Podcast. As always, Robert Reynolds. Swolders is back. Back
What's up?
again. Not much, man. How was Vegas?
It was great. We had a good time. Still adjusting. If there's one thing I could say, it's don't do a 3 hour time change on the same weekend that you also lose an hour of sleep.
I was about to ask. I was like, how did that go?
It's still going. I mean, I think I slept till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, just like trying to adjust.
I can't wait for them. I can't wait to get rid of daylight savings time. Man, when I was deployed and they didn't have daylight savings time there, dude, things went so smooth. So, just letting you know, there are places that don't observe it, and I don't understand why we observe it. I can do away with it
I'm
and be
pretty
fine.
sure. I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's not Utah. Maybe it's Arizona. Joel, let me know. But I'm pretty sure one of those two um, don't don't observe.
Ruth says you've got some explaining to do. Lucy.
Missed our birthdays. Sorry, Roots.
Man, oh man. He was trying to make some money for you.
1 second.
Oh, oh. Oh. As this ugly mug is on the video screen, we wait patiently. This could get interesting. This could get interesting for Mr. Roots. Could this be a recap from what happened Friday? Well, what Roots wanted for his birthday. The suspense is building. Roots, take a guess on what it is. For those listening on podcasts, this is why I'm sorry to announce this, but Friday, Roots' birthday, and maybe we get to see. This is why sometimes being live is Roots is too much suspense. This is the perks of doing live show, folks. But anyways, as you know, Kobe decides to come back whenever he does. Got a lot to talk about. Spring ball starts tomorrow. Um, spring ball starting tomorrow. We talked about the key position battles, but I want to go a little bit deeper than that, right? I think we're going to do that a little bit. And with that being said, right, what does it mean? Right, there's a lot that goes into spring camp, obviously culminating into G Day, right? Before we get started, let's bring up a perfect time to bring in our sponsor, Apotheos. Here, Apotheos coffee is some of the best coffee I've ever had. I can assure you that. JOGG will vouch for that, I'm assuming as well. Listen, go to www.dgdpodcast.com/Apotheos. Check out their coffee selection. Get you however many bags of coffee you want, and every bag of coffee that you get using this link up here at the top will get 20% of each bag will go will go towards the Classic City Collective. That is something Apotheos does because they are the official coffee and cold brew partner of the Classic City Collective, so that all 21 sports are present and accounted for. Check them out at Apotheos Roastery on Instagram or Apotheos Coffee on Twitter. Give them a follow, both platforms, folks. Check it out. Listen, while we do that right there, let's get started with some questions. So I want to ask some questions for the chat here. What are you most excited about for spring camp? Also, check, select a poll. Right, I opened up a poll. Are you excited? I think this should be 100% to 0%. This should be. Let's see. Rudes asks, will we see Mount Rushmore of Dog Nation? Hmm, I don't know. That is an excellent question. Excellent question. I do want to take some time here and also look at the spring camp, and it's going to be interesting, right? Because you have to select a little bit of time to to really make an impact, around positions, right? I don't want to harp on what we talked about last episode, but you kind of do, right? Rudes asked uh, who rises up in the secondary to replace Ringo and Chris Smith. And, you know, for me, right, obviously we have several guys. This is why I think the spring camp's so important, because spring camp, and we'll talk to Kobe about this in just a minute too, just to kind of get a feel for what exactly is the composition of this. But the thought for me is this is a perfect time for guys to get about equal amount of reps, right, across the board. To see who really, has will separate. And in my opinion, I think you look at a guy like Dalen Everett. Uh, I'm not saying he will, but I definitely think that is something to monitor. I think he has a really good shot to do that. When you also take a look at replacing Chris Smith, right? You got Dan Jackson coming back, but will he be able to practice this spring? That's going to be a question that we'll have to watch out for. It could be a storyline to see. Uh, but if not, I think you look at guys like David Daniel or Jonel Aguero. Jonel Aguero is looking to be one of these freshmen that could make an impact early. And then that's a testament to the recruiting and development. I think we'll see that. Rude says, or Rude's asked, I should say, does Nyland Green finally see the field? Listen, he's got every shot to do it. We're about to find out. I think at the conclusion of spring practice and G Day, we'll see. Um, but I definitely think he's got a pretty damn good shot. I mean, he's waited his turn, busted his ass on special teams. We saw that, but hopefully he's at a situation where you're not pushed and buried underneath. I don't want that to happen for anyone, but unfortunately, that's just the way of the business sometimes. um, yeah, I mean, and Rude's also coming in hot with these with some of these, but the O line shuffle. Who are the number twos, right? The backups. I think we kind of have a feel for the starting roles. I mean, outside of some, maybe the tackle spots, but obviously the backup, like who's going to back up a tackle, right? Could you see a guy like Blasky or someone else? You don't really don't know. So obviously there's a lot of storyline there is to see what kind of offensive line depth you've got, right? You guys, Wanted mentioned, guys like Bobo and Griffin Scroggs. Like, where do they stand moving into the spring? You know, a lot. This is a good time for a lot of rotation to see, you know, just see who fits and who plays well. Chemistry, from a chemistry standpoint, who meshes well together, and what units work the best, right? So in that case, it's going to get interesting. But obviously, you look at guys that I think have solidified their starting spot as obviously I think Cedric Van Pran. There's no doubt he's the guy. Tate Ratledge is another guy. Whoa.
Sorry about that. We're breaking out of the prison everybody's seen, so the new landlord needed some information.
Uh-oh. Moving on up. No, so I was sitting there talking about before you hop back on. We talked about some storylines, right? Rude's dropping a lot of comments talking about seeing if Nyland Green finally sees a field, offensive line shuffle. I'll let you take a look at these comments and see if you want to speak on some of these, man.
All right, let me scroll down on them. Here we go. Who rises up in the secondary? Replace Ringo and Chris Smith. Well, I think safety is pretty going to be a pretty tight battle. I mean, I think you already have Malachi Starks. Dan Jackson's coming back. He's going to be fully healthy. Smoke Bowie is coming in from Texas A&M. I know he plays safety / star. So to me, like, that's a name you're going to see. And then Taki Smith as well for safety / star. He's really a guy that's kind of flown under the radar here. But, I mean, he was an All-American at West Virginia before he came to Georgia. He's dealt with some injuries, kind of been lost in the shuffle. But, I mean, he's a guy that if he can play to the level he played at West Virginia, he's going to be a really, really good player for us.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's see. Ringo, who replaces Ringo? I would say probably Dalen Everett right now would be the, like, pre-spring practice favorite, I think. That's just my opinion. The O-line shuffle, who are the twos? That's a good question. I'd have to look. It'll be interesting to see who like practices for spring practice, what the depth chart looks like, and then what the portal looks like at the end of May going into next season. Because I really think you're getting to the point in some guys' careers that they're juniors, they're third year juniors, they have 2 years of eligibility left, like if or maybe even more. They're kind of seeing the writing on the wall of like, okay, I may only get to play here a year, maybe two. It's time for me to kind of move on and go somewhere that I can see the field. Nyland Green, I think, would be the other name at that corner besides Dalen Everett, if I remember right. I'm pretty sure Nyland plays corner.
Yeah.
Um,
You still got guys. You're looking at Dalen Everett. You're looking at Nyland Green. I think you look at uh, like what was it, AJ Harris? I think is another guy that could really, as a true freshman, could make some waves. Daniel Harris. This is a good problem to have, right? There's
for
just a
sure.
I do want to ask you a question though. I think obviously I think there's some key spots, but there are some names that I'm curious about. And when you look at the offensive line, like I talked a little bit about it, right? The tackle spot, right? I think you look at Mims. Truss is probably a guy that you're expected to start. Cedric Van Pran, Tate, that that tackle spot, right? I think there's a lot of people thinking that you have Ernest Green, and I think Ernest Green is going to be a bad dude. But when you look at the guys behind him, or guys that's been here before him, I should say, like Blasky, right? I think Blasky has that multi-tool type mentality where he could play at tackle spot and be just fine too. And that dude, listen, I don't know what it is, but when you come out of high school as a wrestler and you have that wrestling background, I think that translates very well with offensive linemen. It's just that the flexibility, the things like that. Because you look at Blasky and you look at Fairchild as another one. Both of those guys have wrestling backgrounds, state champion wrestlers, if I'm not mistaken, and arguably some of the most violent guys when it comes to blocking. And Fairchild is probably the strongest guy on the team. Like, dude is ridiculously strong. So when you look at the offensive line, this is what I'm excited for because you've experienced this. Spring practice opens up I feel like a genuine competition to let just wars bleed out for several practices. With the fact that you've got so many guys along the offensive line vying for a few spots at best, this could get like not in a bad way, but this could get ugly. Like there's gonna be some wars on the offensive line. Who I guess for this is from your perspective, who are you most excited about to see along the offensive line and where they're at come through the duration of spring camp?
Yeah, I'm actually interested in seeing. I think you've heard a lot about Ernest Green at tackle. I think that's a big name you've heard a lot about. But I would be interested to hear, and this would just purely be to like change things up, would be the fact can Truss move outside if we needed him to? Can he play that right tackle? Because it's always going to be easier to replace a guard than it is going to be a tackle because you just don't leave guards on an island that often. So at some point, like you're saying, if things are by second week, don't be mistaken. Truss is going to be getting some right tackle reps to see if he can play out there. And if they think he can, then you basically have a free for all, like you're saying, at left guard. Because you're right. Blasky, Fairchild, Micah Morris, all these people, they all can play left guard. That's an easy place to plug somebody and go, hey, you're gonna play left guard. Right tackle, left tackle, probably right tackle though. I'd imagine
Yeah.
that Mims will move to left, but that's just not an easy place to plug and play. That's going to be a position that position battle will not be fully over until probably a week before the first game, and even then, with
You
way
might
the
see it rotate
schedule
through
is,
the
the way
season.
yes, With what the schedule is through the first 4 games, I mean, you could see a different guy start at right tackle all 4 games.
With a new quarterback, though, I feel like that would be a little bit nerve wracking because you want that cohesion. But at the same time, Georgia's that talented. I think our quarterbacks are that talented that it might not necessarily matter too much.
You're
With this,
okay. I'll put it this way: you're only going to rotate if you believe as the offensive line coach they can handle it. Like you're not going to put a guy out there that's going to be a liability for your quarterback.
yeah,
At that point, you already know it's not his job. So,
absolutely. Rude's asked about Micah Morris. Listen, Micah Morris is going to play a lot. He's going to play. Dude's too good not to play. Him and Fairchild both. Him and Fairchild both are too good not to play, which worries me, right? Because Georgia has to keep those two guys. I mean, if we're talking about these two guys, these are two guys that you are must haves. They are must haves, and make sure that, whatever, if they're starting or not, they do not leave this program. Those are two guys that are too good. They will be NFL guys. And Micah Morris, listen, Micah Morris is wildly athletic, but he has the hands that will he moves people. Like he moves people. Um, Rudes also says backup center. I think you have to go. I think Blasky could be an option. Griffin Scroggs could be an option there too. I think Griffin out of Grayson was playing center. I thought that's what Juan had said, and maybe somebody else. Kobe's shaking his head a little bit. Maybe not. Who would you think, Kobe? Who would you think?
Probably Blasky. Probably, I would think he would be. It just depends. I mean, it just depends how it all kind of shakes up. We were very fortunate last year that we were very healthy on the offensive line. We rotated a lot. We were very healthy, stayed healthy throughout the entire season, through the preseason, through the games. You look at a year ago before that, you lose Tate game 1, like play 3. And all of a sudden you've completely upended your plan on what your offensive line is going to look like.
Because that was when you had Erickson. Yeah, because against Clemson, that's when you had Erickson play the right guard.
And you're trying to work in trust some, and like you just all of a sudden you realize that you didn't have a backup plan. And so I think that's the nice thing this past year has shown you is like, okay, we're going to rotate enough guys that we're going to have a good backup plan. And at some point, I hope everybody in the starting 5 stays healthy all year. And I hope we're able to rotate because we're up big in some games. But, I think Blast could be the backup at 3 positions. He could be the 6th offensive lineman. He could be your backup, either guard or your backup center. He could be,
Hell, he could even start at tackle. You never know. The kid's that good. He could play all 5 positions, and he's good enough to do it. But obviously, this is why spring ball is so fun and exciting, right? Because you sit there.
It'll be really fun and exciting because they're going to put Van Pran will be one team center, and then whoever they deem possibly the backup center will have a line, whoever you say that is. And then Van Pran will probably get Mims so he can help him at left tackle. But then the other center probably is going to get both the guards. So the number 2 center will probably get both number 1 guards.
So you're saying like the starting guards would get in the backup line?
Mm-hmm. Because spring practice breaks down into you turn your team into 2 teams.
Yeah.
So like it'll shuffle out weird.
No, I got you. It makes sense though, because you don't want a genuine starting 1 lineup, starting 2 lineup. You want to kind of blend them together so that way you get some cohesion from everybody, I would assume.
Well, and it just helps it just helps people learn. So like you're taking Cedric Van Pran and you're putting him out there with 2 guards that not that they don't know what they're doing, but like he can help
use the assistance, yeah. And again, this is another reason why Cedric Van Pran coming back was so crucial for this season. So Mitch all day. Shout out Mitch, Phil the Strings. Asks, I want to see 2 things. He's talking about what he wants to see for spring ball. Who's our quarterback and how our pass rush develops. obviously, the quarterback competition is going to be a huge storyline this entire spring camp. Um, Again, I've talked about it. I think it's Beck, but in my opinion, Mitch, I think you're going to see these guys get equal reps. There's no reason not to believe it, but I do think that um, Beck is going to get every opportunity to start. Right, I think that's the case. So we'll see what happens there. And as far as pass rush development, you've got these incoming guys, and I think this is why these early enrollees, right, the fact that you get so many recruits and commits to enroll early, because now instead of a traditional midsummer, they get to go through the experience of spring camp. You get a head start, and this is also something that Georgia's just benefited from in the past. So, when you look at guys like Mike Hill, we know Mike Hill had I would say, a great first year. Now you look to build off that. You look at guys like Marvin Jones Jr. Will he be able to play or participate in spring ball? We shall see. Um, but then you look at guys like Damon Wilson, Salmon Pemba, Gabe Harris. You got Darius Smith. Darius Smith, see him maybe at some star, as crazy as it sounds. Kobe, I'm gonna let you pontificate a little bit more here about Mitch's question about the pass rush development. What do you see out of that? I expect it to be pretty interesting as well. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think the big thing, Mitch, is kind of like where we were last year, like game 6 or game 5. We'd only had like 5 sacks, 6 sacks the whole year. Um, and I think a big part of that was the teams we were playing and how they were, basically either throwing the ball away or, running the ball on long third downs, basically preventing us from having sack opportunities. I think the big question again will be, like you look at Oregon. I think we had 1 sack against Oregon, maybe none. But they were also throwing the ball in under like 2.1 seconds every time they drop back for a pass. I mean, if you have teams take out your ability to like sack you by getting rid of the ball that fast, it also prevents the big plays you're trying to prevent. Those super long third down conversions. And yeah, like you're saying, we faced a lot of mobile quarterbacks. We faced a lot of teams at weird times that they didn't have necessarily their starting quarterback. I mean, I remember the Auburn game. They looked like they didn't know what they were doing because it wasn't their starting quarterback. It's a guy that was much more mobile. He was very mobile. He threw the ball away early. If he felt any disruption in the play, if all of a sudden he took his steps, checked first read, felt pressure, he was throwing the ball away. He wasn't taking the sack, but that was their game plan. I would really hope the first 4 games, again, they're going to be, really easy-ish games, even South Carolina, I think. It'd be great to, come out with 3 sacks, 4 sacks averaged a game through those 4 games, have 12, 13 sacks early on in the year. I don't know if we'll throw for more touchdowns or record more sacks.
I think we throw for more. The reason why I say that is because when you look at the quarterbacks that we're going to face, right? Like when you look at like Robbie Ashford. Robbie Ashford's going to do the same shit again this year. Just watch. Just watch. Milton. Milton at Tennessee. I'm curious to see how that plays out, right? Spencer Rattler, is more of a mobile quarterback, so he can extend plays with his feet. And I think this also is a good time to bring in another storyline. And I'm gonna try to transition this a little bit, and we'll go straight from it. Bobo, what is Bobo going to do offensively? Are we going to see more rushing? Are we going to see more rushing instilled? Are we going to see the same kind of prolific passing? Utilizing yards after catch, right, and screens and all these things. Don't know. I don't know, but this is a good time to see what we're. This is what's going to happen over spring camp. We're about to find out. I do think
I'm most excited about to find out over spring camp.
what
will the return of the elusive fullback.
I don't see it. I don't see it. That's my prediction. I mean, you're taking the
I'm not
problem is
saying an every down. I'm not saying every down. I'm not. But I'm saying
what
that
you're
there
saying
will be
is
a formation that we will jog out a little fullback, and we're going to run the Bobo toss sweep. You just can't not do it.
see, my problem is this though. Last year would have been the perfect time to do that with Darnell, but you don't have a tight end like Darnell to do that.
But I'm talking about a fullback that's like, 6 foot, 245, and is missing some brain cells. I'm not talking about the 6'8", rumbling,
Oh,
stumbling
you're
guy.
talking. Kobe is getting a chance to talk. This is about absurd. Juan, this is absurd. He was talking. Oh my God, Juan, you should be here. I need that little sign, that little thing that says you should be here. This is Juan right now. Me to you, Juan. You should be here. But
To
no,
be fair, one, I have left twice to answer phone calls today, so shame on me.
Holy Grail, that shit. Shame. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I just don't know if you do see a fullback. I get your point because I mean, listen, give me some under center toss sweep, and yes, absolutely. No, Juan, you were lying. Juan, you're lying. 90% me. Come on now. This ain't paycheck out distribution. I don't even think we get a paycheck because well, G's doing her job. But no, in all seriousness, as we kind of get back to it though, who would you use? I mean, like, do we have any candidates for this fullback? Juan, uh, Juan, let us know if you think we got a fullback on board. Kobe, who would you use if you could?
I could find me a walk on that I would use, no doubt.
Cash, not Cash Jones. I
No,
love
he's not
Cash
big
Jones, but not
enough.
Cash. No.
I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. Let me check the roster.
This could get interesting, folks. We could have a candidate for fullback. Let me think. If I had to choose, just because we're here now, give me. Well, you're not going to see Branson Robinson do it, but even though you could, see that you know what I mean. Get a two running back system, but I mean, damn, you're using. You're looking at that situation, and I'm okay with it. Uh, oh my goodness, now you got me thinking. I mean, Branson's the perfect choice there. Yeah, I mean it's. But at the same time, though, you're not going to. Dejan could too at fullback. Nah, you want Dejan. Dejan's too versatile a threat out of the backfield, but you put him at fullback, that'd be ooh. We're gonna let Kobe do some digging here. I'm gonna keep, I'm keep filibustering here a little bit. I'm trying to think as well in the meantime. Do you got somebody?
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we would ever do this. But what I'm looking for is someone about the size of Chaz Chambliss.
So about that 6'1", 6'2".
He's 6'2", 250 pounds. I'd like him to be maybe like 245. But that's the range I'm
not the
looking
Bama
for.
6'2", not the Bama 6'2", folks.
Yeah,
Legit 6'2".
That's the range I'm looking for in my.
Rude says who's a third street linebacker. Oh man, C.J. Washington. Give me C.J. Washington in there as a blocking fullback. That'd be wild.
It'd be fun to see. I'm not saying a ton of plays. I'm just saying.
I think you know what though. You throw that out there. Some teams are going to shit themselves, not knowing what the hell to do. Like some people are going to freak out. I mean, what if? Well, no, you're not going to. What about Lawson Lucky? I mean, he's a little bit taller than your 6'2", but the question is, you got to find somebody that's going to be able to block like that, though. That's another thing. You know what I mean? I mean, Chambliss will unfortunately get called for targeting. He left a haunting presence after that hit to Corum. So I always get nervous whenever he's on the field and makes a tackle. Listen, I thought that was clean, by the way. I'm just saying. But no, I do think it'll be interesting because you take a look at Bobo and what we saw in the past.
I found my walk on. Graham Collins, sophomore, redshirt. He'll be a redshirt sophomore linebacker from Atlanta, Georgia, 6'2", 220.
6'2", 220. Graham Collins.
You're my man, Graham.
We're gonna let's do this.
And here's my backup to Graham.
Oh my
Cade
goodness.
Brock,
Oh,
friend
dude,
of
DGD
Cade Brock.
Outdoors.
Yep, six
Shout out
foot
DG.
250.
That boy's stout. He's like a fire hydrant.
I like both of those guys.
We're gonna have to clip this and tag him in it. Let him know that we see the potential in y'all guys. I promise. DGD approved, by the way. Hashtag DGD approved. Uh, but no, nonetheless, right? I do think if we're getting back in all seriousness, I think when you look at the potential for the wrinkles, right, that we're not used to seeing under Todd Monken, influxing a mixture of Todd Monken, because I do think that you're going to see some of that stuff stick around. It makes too much sense to do that. But I think Kirby also will allow Bobo to do some things. Um, you know, his offense was successful at Georgia, but when you have guys like Willie Martinez and Todd Grantham as your defensive coordinator, your defense just ain't where it needs to be. And now that your defense is where it needs to be, maybe you see some of these things in Bobo we trust. Um, that's just my thought. But ultimately, I want to transition over to the defense now, Kobe. Defensively, what are some storylines that you think could be playing out throughout the spring?
I honestly think, and I know this is terrible for content, but this is going to feel really good for people who haven't felt this way in a long time. I feel like every year, like 2020, the spring after 2020, we're all talking about like, what's this defense going to be? It gave up the most points in 2020 under Kirby Smart. Was 2021 going to hold? Who's going to be playing? How good are we going to be? And then lo and behold, we're the best defense ever. And then last offseason, we're like, wow, we're the best defense ever. But we just lost all those guys, 5 first-rounders. And now we're looking around going, well, who's going to replace that production? Are we going to see a huge fall off, that we're not going to be as good defensively? Come back out, we're top 5 defense, still probably maybe the second or third best defense Kirby's ever had here. Really phenomenal. Going to see some guys get drafted, but really bringing back a ton of production. I mean, you basically lost a safety, a corner, and a defensive lineman. But otherwise, you're returning, 4 or 5 defensive linemen that were upperclassmen. You lost 2 linebackers in Nolan and Robert Beal, but you're bringing in, you have Michael Williams. You have a lot of youth there that's going to be really good. You still have Chaz. You're returning basically all your interior linebackers. And at safety, you have guys in the fold that, a guy that's a third-string guy that's been an All-American. Your DB room, your cornerbacks, Kirby and them have recruited so heavily. You're talking about that one spot at O-line, that tackle spot is going to be a bloodbath. That other corner spot is going to be a bloodbath.
Oh, there's some fucking dogs.
You have 5 legitimate cornerbacks fighting for that one spot.
Oh, no doubt. That's again. This is so. We have to look at this because it's inevitable. But when you take a look at the bodies that we have and the scholarship count, that means people will leave after this. Obviously, I wish we had a situation where we didn't have to let nobody to go. And I'm not going to sit here and make a prediction on who will and who won't. But this is why this is important, because you have that many quality. You have that much quality there. How do you keep these guys going, right? Like the rotation, will it work? You know what I mean? Um, that's just my thoughts. And Rudes talks about surprise. I haven't mentioned the defense's transition to a 4-down front. What are your thoughts on that, Kobe?
I would be interested to know, I haven't seen anything about that, so I'm a little off. I understand that we do traditionally stay in 4 down, but I mean, we still run a lot of like mint defense here at Georgia. So I'd be interested to
Yeah,
know, like, you know,
that's I think you're. I think the four.
I'd have to do some looking into that, Roots, because I didn't know that, or I'd be curious to know, like, have we officially said that we're like a 4 down team all
Yeah,
the time?
I still think you're going to see them at front, though, man. I mean, when you take a look at it, there's no reason from a personal perspective to make me think otherwise, right? You're having to replace Jalen Carter, but you've got. I mean, think about it. You've got so much interior talent there. That I think you could you could really just throw a name out there and say that they can take the step up to replace the production to some degree. I think Warren Brinson, if he becomes more consistent, or Nazir Stackhouse, Zion Logue, all these guys have the ability to do that. I mean, then you got guys like Krista Miller, that I think serve, if their second year, second spring goes well, that they could thrust themselves in there. You've got Bear Alexander last year that made a name for himself coming on extremely strong last season. So you have Bear, you've got this, you got the upperclassmen. I mean, you got Jordan Hall that I think could be in line to be one of the next guys. And then obviously when it comes to situations like this, you also have Ja, right? Like, I mean, just a true, just massive behemoth type guy in the middle. Um, I think you're going to see the same style defense. There's no reason to believe that things will change. But I do see Rude's point. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Um, I mean, that's just my thought. You know what I mean? Because he says, Rude's also says, not officially said, and they still play mint, but the starting formation they play more than other fronts is the 4 down. I mean, he's not wrong. I think you look at a base mint 4-2-5, 4-2-5 mint defense there, but I think you look at situational type football. You're going to have. I think you can honestly see entire packages change depending on down and distance. Um, when you look at guys like Jalen Walker, could excel on third and medium, third and long. Damon Wilson's another guy that you could throw in there situationally as he gets into the system and things like that. Kobe, what do you think? I'll let you talk a little bit more since Juan wants to say that I talk too damn much. What are your thoughts on the situation there to continue with?
I mean, yeah, I'm with Rudes. We definitely do play a lot of 4 down, and I think it just kind of depends on what you call it and what we show can differ depending on game plans from week to week. And that definitely could be a little bit of a wrinkle that Shu and Muschamp think put us in better situations against more teams. But you still definitely have versatile outside linebackers. I mean, like we've talked about, Darius Smith is a freak athlete that he has the opportunity that he puts on some weight. He could be your next top 15 pick at outside linebacker.
I think if
Um,
he does, he will be because that dude's just too physically gifted.
I think Michael definitely is much more of your traditional pass rusher, but he's also playing much more of your traditional like hand in the dirt lineman. He's not really playing like your jack outside linebacker, kind of like what Nolan played. Um, and I think that's always been a thing, at least since I've been here with Kirby, is like you kind of have one guy that's like a bigger kind of outside linebacker, defensive lineman mix, and then you always have a guy that's much more of your speed, kind of finesse guy that's going to get the sacks more often. I even think back to like Lorenzo Carter and Davin Bellamy. Like one guy's the power, one guy's the speed. You think of Aziz. He was a mixture of both. That's what made him so good. He played that jack linebacker. He had the power. He had the speed. Stuff like that. So, it'll just be interesting. Like you're saying, you've lost Robert Beal and you've lost Nolan Smith. Chaz has gotten to play some. Michael's played a good bit, but you need depth. It's something that you needed at that position last year after the injury. it'll just be interesting to see how the depth continues to kind of shake out for the springtime.
Yeah, the good thing is you have so much depth, really across the board along the defense. I mean, there isn't a position on the defense that I'm just not worried from a depth standpoint. Like there's so much quality at every position. You can look at, both corner spots, both ends. I think you have good depth there. Interior, you have good depth. Safeties, I think, obviously we're trying to figure out who's going to be the starter, but that's another situation where you have some quality depth. But I want to take and make it a little bit different here now. I want to transition over to your expertise here, and that's the special teams. A lot of people are overlooking this. Jared Zirkle and Peyton Woodring could see a kicker battle. What are you thinking there? You think Zirkle or do you think Woodring? You think Zirkle? Why is that?
Woodring's not here, right?
Well, oh yeah, that's right. For some reason, I thought he was early enrollee, but he's a midsummer guy, though. Correct?
Yeah. And
So
enjoy that. I mean, I don't care how bad. Like Zirkle, shout out Zirkle. I know him pretty well. Unless he just absolutely goes like over in the spring, it's his job to lose. Come the
well,
summer.
yeah. See, I was about to say that gives him. With that being said, right now that we know that Woodring is not going to be here, this gives him every chance to solidify the spot. So
if he kicks 80% or better in the spring, it won't even be a question going into the summer. I think the biggest question right now that I know of is they've talked about that they may want to do a kickoff specialist. So like they would have a guy
purely just for kickoffs.
Yeah.
Which that would be nice because
like Camarda did it. I think Camarda's what really got them like thinking about it because like Rod was pretty good at kickoffs. But then Camarda, when he was so good, like elite, like one of the best to ever do kickoffs ever.
Oh, dude, he was always a touchback. It was an automatic touchback.
I could be wrong. Landon, if you're watching this, let me know. Is Camarda still doing it for the Bucks? I don't remember.
I think he is actually.
But it definitely like then Pod got better the farther along he went, but like it was just definitely obvious that like still Camarda, somebody that only has to focus on kicking kickoffs, can really let that leg loose a little bit more versus your kickers trying to save a little juice in case you got to kick a long field goal later. So from what I've heard, we're going to have
both kickers are on scholarship, unless I'm known otherwise. Because I know Zirkle came in on scholarship. Woodring, yes. I think, got on scholarship.
Yes.
So if in my theory, if you have two scholarship kickers, use them both. There's no reason not to.
It'll be interesting. If you can't, it's just hard to use a freshman. It is the bottom line. Woodring would just have to be so phenomenal, and not saying he won't be. But
didn't he kick a 60-yarder in the state in the playoffs or something like that? Didn't he kick a 60-yard field goal or something like that in Louisiana?
I don't know. And I agree. I mean, he may be. I don't know a lot about him, but I know that in high school you get to kick off a tee. Things like that. There's not as much pass rush, not as much. There's a lot of things that kind of go into that. But, at the end of the day, he'll get to be here in June just like anybody else, and he'll get to compete for a job. The problem is he just won't get all the competition reps over these next 5 weeks, basically.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, with that being said, this is why enrolling early and being able to do so could really be beneficial for anyone coming out of high school because it gives you a jump start, gets you a head start in your collegiate career, right? When you look at guys that don't come in early enrollee, right? If you think about it, and I don't really want to try to do this, but I think it's kind of one of these situations where it's an example. Jaheim Singletary, right? If you take a look at Jaheim coming in last year, and now I understand kickers and all this shit. The kicker and corner is completely different, but the concept of coming in late compared to enrolling early, and getting that spring practice, right? That means more eyes on you from the coaching staff. That means, right, understanding everything that you need. Hell, Jaheim comes in mid-semester, right, midsummer, and then now he's gone. You know, I, not saying that that's everybody's fate, but that's an example, right? Of what if Jaheim would have came in early? I mean, hell, you could see the same thing, but at least I feel like you're going to see a situation where you get more opportunity to learn the playbook, and get to show out and compete.
I assume, yeah, I was about to say, I assume Michael means Brett Thorson.
And he
Um,
corrected himself.
I don't see Thorson doing kickoffs. That would be surprising to me. I just know that he's really ever done is punt, even like in Pro Kick Australia. But maybe, I mean, they're definitely like, don't think it won't be something they work on in the spring.
No,
But
I mean I would assume so. What about
but
long snapping, Kobe?
it's done. It's the guy that did long deep snapping, William Moat, is back, and he'll take over for short snapping field goals as well. And he did
Yeah.
some of those towards the end of last season as well. So long snapping, there won't even be a job open at either snap. He has that. So I think punter. I mean, punter they may look at a little bit, but punter's pretty closed, I would say, and like long snapping is 100% closed. Kicking, I would say, is the most open, with kickoffs being probably wide open. If I had to rank them,
I see. I see. Project Pat's asking me where the visor is. Listen, I bring this out on special occasions. Maybe I should have thought about this. Could preview in spring camp be a special occasion? Maybe, but you got to save yourself, right? You got to make the visor count. So I'm just saying. Joe Huff working today, but wanted to say great show. Hey man, thanks for the support there. Thanks for the kind words. I feel like Rudes and Project Pat here are jumping on Kobe right now, um, for not being here Friday, man. Guys, I can't help you. All right, I can't help you. He's here now though, so sulk in it, right? Bask in the glory, if you will. Kobe, I want to ask you this. What from your so obviously we've talked a lot about the storyline so far, but what give us a run through of what spring camp's like. I mean, we hear about it, right? But you're not going to see it. But ultimately, what is it like? What is spring camp like?
it and we talked to Tate about it a little bit, and Ryland when we talked to them about when the worst part of the year is. And to me, this is always, in my opinion, spring is the worst time of year because it's 3 days of practice. It's still 6 days a week, so it's 3 days of practice, 3 days of meetings, for 5 weeks, and it just feels like it's never going to end because you're still working out, you're still doing all these things like it's not your like it's not having practice going on. Like they probably had workouts today, like heavy squat, stuff like that. And then they're going to expect you to go out and do a 2.5 hour practice tomorrow. And then you're going to come in on Wednesday and do heavy bench and meet and do things. It just feels like you never leave the facility. And then at the end of the week, at the end of the 5 weeks, like you get to have the spring game, which great, ton of fun. But like it's not like having an actual game. So to me, it's the most work with the least reward that you do all season.
So I feel like though when it comes to G Day itself though, like this year it might be a situation where for the most part, like this could be the most competitive game format that we see this semester or this year though. I mean, like when you look at our schedule, I'm kind of joking, but at the same time, I'm somewhat not joking because our schedule just isn't that strong. And when you take a look at Georgia on Georgia, I think that's more of a matchup than held most of our matchups in the regular season. So from a fan's perspective, I'm looking forward to it because you're going to see good on good. I mean, we've come to the I think we could say we've come to the conclusion that anytime Georgia goes against itself, it's going to be good versus good. That we're just that deep now. Um, but you know, aside from the 5 weeks of hell, basically, not only physically, right? I think you look at mentally because of the fact, like we said earlier, Bobo's going to be installing the new offensive playbook for what it's worth, right? And I think fans will have to wait patiently to see how that goes. So maybe the verbiage stays the same, but what if there's some new install, right? What if there's different things like that? Um, I don't know if you can answer this from personal experience or not, but from an offensive perspective and defensive perspective, is there a lot of install that goes on during this time, like a ton of
That's
it?
all. That's all this is install.
Okay.
This is literally
Um,
5 weeks of install.
so ultimately, it's just, I mean, obviously they schedule it the way they do, but like typically with install, you're sitting there going through, a few plays at a time potentially. You know, I would say maybe per day you could look at maybe a handful of plays to install and just rep out. I would assume. Now I'm sure, and this is another thing. Like going back to me, and I know it's a completely different level, but like as you go through install and really things like that, right there, you have walkthrough, you have right, then you have like half speed and speed it up, things like that. Is that on the go figured out?
Say that again. You kind of broke up there.
Well, so for instance, like when you're doing install, right? Like in the spring and into the summer and all that stuff, which
Mm-hmm.
you sit there when you're installing and you're really trying to grasp the offense. For me, you were sitting there walk through situations. You would walk through it, rep it, but so even at half speed, and then you would go full speed, and then you would just rep it that way. From a Georgia perspective, is it walk through to full speed, or is it just full speed, fix it on the fly? I would assume you'd see a walkthrough, but I mean, I might be wrong.
Well, so what they'll do is they'll install it in meetings for X amount of time, and then pre-practice you always have a 30-minute pre-practice walk where you like
Okay,
go over install, and then practice, like you do stretch and stride, and practice begins, and then
I got
like
you.
during practice you would like be using the plays, stuff like that. So
Gotcha. I was just curious because I mean,
you'll basically install your whole, I'd say at least 3/4, if not all of your defense, and pretty similarly to the offense at this point. Um, and then by the time G Day happens, you'll have almost all of it installed. And then you'll take a month off and you'll come back in June and you'll just work out in June. But then in July, you'll start install again and you'll basically reinstall everything again. So you
yeah.
install things like 2 to 3 times a year just for like your own
Well,
mind. Like,
some for I was gonna say some of it's from a refreshing standpoint. Some of it's just you understand it, but then when it comes down to a game plan, right? Specifically, I remember Tate and Ryland had mentioned TCU when Monken opened up the playbook. I think that's interesting to hear because the fact that you have them opening up that much install during the week of that is just insane to hear. But I'm curious to see though too, because like at G Day, we always feel as if we see a vanilla style game, but it's by design, correct?
well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's that vanilla. I would say it's just the fact that like you're not trying to throw the ball all over the yard a lot of times. Like more times than not, you're trying to like run the ball. You're trying to be physical, trying to tackle. Have good run fits. You'll throw the ball some. Like I think we threw the ball more last year than I can remember in recent history. And then depending on like what game and what day it is, like I remember a year in like 2017, spring of 2017, like I had Nick and Sony on my team for the spring game. And like I think Nick ran the ball twice and Sony ran the ball 3 times. and then they didn't have another play the rest of the spring game. Like we put in the third string running back. So like
Yeah.
that's part of it too. Is like the guys that you're 100% about aren't going to get a ton of reps in the game. Like you're repping guys that you're like, okay, can this guy be a player for us? Okay, can this guy be a starter for us? Okay, can this guy be a backup? Can he be somebody we depend on, somebody that travels, or he's still maybe a year away?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think as we get ready to wrap this up, I do think right, there's a lot to look forward to, right, in these 5 weeks, offensively, defensively, right. These position battles that we talked about Friday, a little bit here today, but um, you know, there's going to be a lot to look into and kind of understanding what goes on, um, in these practices, and then obviously culminating at G Day, and then there's a little bit of a dead period before the summer. But ultimately, I do want to end on saying, hey, it might not be fall football, but football is football, and football is about to be back. And like I said, it might not be full on, but I'm just gonna say, when you hear, I'm assuming pads will be popping here, so they can. Well, if I'm not mistaken, spring practice you can still hit, just maybe not the first practice. You probably won't see it, but
Probably the
you'll,
first
you'll
two. First two will probably be helmets only. Then after that, it'll be on.
well, yeah. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to go straight into full pads or anything like that, or even shells. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, and like you said, install like offensive line, defensive line, it don't really matter. Offensive line and defensive line, it just don't matter. Um, any final takeaways, sir, before we wrap this thing up?
Go dogs, fellas! I'm ready for spring practice to start. Pro days this week.
Oh, pro days
Baseball's
Wednesday too. So
baseball's at home this week.
speaking of, I'm kind of upset that Georgia baseball isn't ranked yet. But I feel like if they, we have, and we're going to transition to a little bit of baseball talk right here because I feel like it's needed. 12-4 on the season. Connor Tate, dog. I mean, you're watching Condon as well, hitting the ball extremely well, pitching a lot better than last year, but I do think we still need to see a little bit more production and some consistency there. Um, just won the series against Charleston Southern. I really wish that we would have seen the sweep there. I mean, because they mercy ruled in the first doubleheader game.
If
But
you if you sweep if you sweep them and if you probably sweep Princeton, I would say you're ranked right now. If you're, would you say we were 12-4? If we were
I think
14
so.
and
Yeah.
two, you're probably like
Well,
22nd
I mean,
team.
because and this is where it gets interesting. Right now, you look at the game. I mean, won the series against Georgia Tech, which I think that's probably our best series so far. Um, but I wish we would have swept Georgia Tech. It's obviously Georgia Tech. But when we look at what's about to come up this weekend, folks, you got a game. Well, you got a game against Wofford tomorrow, and then after that, you wait to the Friday night. The Friday night three header against um, South Carolina to open up conference play, and that is going to be a damn good series because South Carolina is. I feel like they're already clicking. They are hitting really well, and I mean it's crazy to see this, but I don't know if you saw this, Kobe. 9 teams in the SEC are ranked in the top 25 of D1 baseball right now.
Yeah, 6 of them in
It's
the top
it's
8.
yeah, no, 6 of the top 10.
Well, it
I
used
think
to
I
be,
think it was.
maybe last week it was
No,
6 of the top
well
8.
they updated it this morning. If I'm not mistaken, 6 out of the top 10 are SEC.
Pretty impressive.
Nuts. Because you got LSU. Let's see, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, Ole Miss. I think those four are the 4 out of the top 5, folks. Literally, Wake Forest is the only team non-SEC in the top 5. Vanderbilt at 6, by the way. Like it's insane. But listen, I mean, when you look at it though, man, like the baseball team is clicking right now. I felt like Jalen pitched pretty well on Fridays. He's doing well as a Friday pitcher. Just want to see. I just want to see this kind of transition as we go into conference play again, man. I think that's going to be the key. You know, Collins, I think, needs to be more consistent in conference play. But obviously, I feel optimistic about the season. We got a schedule ahead of us, folks, because a lot of those teams that are ranked right now, we're about to play series with them here through conference play. So, I know. I mean, think about this. You start off a 3-game series against South Carolina, and you end on a 3-game series against the number 1 team in the country right now, LSU. So from start to finish, it's gonna be a bloodbath in the SEC. But there's a good chance for these Diamond Dogs to make it, into regionals and things like that on their way to Omaha. I think I still feel like there's a decent chance. We'll see. Just gonna leave that there though. Pat also says, "Listen, we're not talking about the World Baseball Classic, but Mexico just demolished Team USA last night. I don't know if
Yeah.
you watched that. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
No.
yeah, Mexico beat the fuck out of USA last night, 11-5 or something like that.
Gotcha.
Other than
Yeah,
that, though,
boss. I'm about to get out of here.
I think that's a good time for us to call it a day, folks. Tune in next show. I think we're going to talk some pro day. Pro day is Wednesday. With that being said, have a great day, Brigade. Thank you for coming in hot and heavy throughout the show. With that being said, have a good day. Go Dogs.